Welcome to the live desk. As always, I am Janae Hancock, and we do have some breaking news. You can see that here on your screen. We are waiting for a press conference to get underway. The Jackson County Prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, will announce new criminal charges regarding the Klymax Lounge nightclub shooting. Again, that took place at around 1:25 in the morning on Sunday, May 21st of this year. Police Chief Stacey Graves and Mayor Quentin Lucas, they're all expected to attend the conference. Hopefully, we will be able to hear from them as well, and we will bring you live coverage of that press conference. It is expected to get underway in about 1 minute. So we are just waiting for all of that information to come in, and I will turn straight to that live shot. But for right now, I do want to take a look at this video that I have here at the live desk. This is the lounge just reopened its doors to the public just a few weeks ago with a message to stop the violence. They held an event, and actually people of all ages attended this event, from toddlers to adults, and those gathered at Klymax said that gun violence, enough is enough. You can see this poster here. They are saying, "Stop killing us." I do want to take a listen in to one person that attended that event, and we just got that live shot where we are expecting the Jackson County Prosecutor to speak on those new criminal charges here in a bit. So we'll turn there here in a moment once they get that underway. But for right now, let's take a listen in to one of the people who attended that event once the lounge reopened its doors.
Someone might be looking up to that guy that's carrying the gun as an influence, and our goal is to let them know, like, that's not an influence. Carrying a gun and senselessly hurting and murdering and shooting somebody is not an influence. And that's our goal today, is to let these little kids know and to let these individuals of our neighborhood know that we stand with you.
And I just want to give a rundown of exactly what happened on May 21st when that shooting took place. Just to give our viewers a reminder, if you were just now joining us, we are waiting for that press conference to get underway. You can see new criminal charges. They are going to announce new criminal charges in that nightclub shooting. Again, on May 21st, multiple officers from KCPD responded to the scene at Klymax Lounge nightclub at around 1:26. So just 1 minute later after that call came in, and officers found 5 victims that they all believed to be adults. 2 victims were pronounced dead at the scene, while the other 3 were transported by EMS to the hospital. One of the dead victims was located outside of the lounge. The second was located inside of the business, and one of the victims was taken to the hospital, and they were later pronounced dead at the hospital after a short time of arriving there. So today's announcement comes with much anticipation as those new criminal charges will be announced. Here's a live look as we continue to wait for the Jackson County Prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, to announce those new criminal charges regarding the Klymax Lounge nightclub shooting. Again, if you're just now joining us, this did take place on May 21st at around 1:25 in the morning. And again, we do know that 3 people ended up dying and multiple others were injured in this shooting. Right now, as we continue to wait for that press conference to get underway, I do want to take a look at the KCPD website. You can see that they updated this just yesterday. So this is the latest number. As far as homicides so far this year, in year 2023, we are at 101 homicides. Again, this was just updated yesterday. You can see in 2022, we were at 170, and in 2021, 157. So we went up last year, and it looks like we are just more than halfway through the year so far in 2023, and we are already approaching that 170 mark that we reached at the end of 2022. So Kansas City continues to be on a record pace for homicides. Again, if you're just now joining us, this is coming straight from the KCPD website. And again, I do want to take a live look at this scene coming from the Jackson County Prosecutor. We are waiting for Jean Peters Baker to announce those new criminal charges in that nightclub shooting regarding Klymax Nightclub Lounge. So as we await that, we will continue to take a live look at this scene right here at the podium. And as soon as someone approaches the podium, we will be sure to up the audio so you all can hear exactly what they will say. But again, Police Chief Stacey Graves and Mayor Quentin Lucas, they're all expected to attend this press conference as well. And hopefully we can have Police Chief Stacey Graves touch on the fact that in just 2023 alone, we are already in the month of July sitting at 101 homicides so far this year. Again, last year we ended the year with 170 homicides. And so far, we are already getting ready to approach that mark there. So you can see this is a live look. As always, we will continue to bring you all live coverage, and we are just waiting for someone to approach this podium with more information regarding those new criminal charges for the Klymax Lounge nightclub shooting.
I didn't wait to bring the big wigs in. Anybody want wine? I got one up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming this morning. We appreciate you. I am Jean Peters-Baker with the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. We have a great crew with us today. Of course, our mayor is here, so thank you, Mayor, for being here. I think he'll make a few comments. As well as our chief, Stacy Graves, is here, and a great team, investigative team on this case. So,
Hello.
figures. Look who it is. Huh? All right, Star. I don't know what to
Just
do.
set it down there.
Set it down. You need some new duct tape on your bed.
Hi, Charlie.
I'll try not to touch it. Okay. Also with us is Sergeant Slater, Mark Slater. I think he will have some comments as well. And this guy, you know, our big hero here of the day is Detective Ryan Taylor and Shantae McMahon, who is also with the prosecutor's office, who worked on this case from its inception. All right, so what we have is another set of charges to bring you from another awful night in Kansas City. Another mass shooting that occurred on May the 21st this year, and we have the main culprit. That main shooter is in custody. He is charged, and he is currently being held on no bond. His name is Isaiah Clinton. Mr. Clinton had been charged days ago, I think, but because he was not in custody, those charges were under seal, and the judge released that seal recently so that we could tell you about these charges. All right, so let me walk through the charges that we have for Mr. Clinton, and then we'll go through why we think potentially this event occurred. Isaiah Clinton is charged with 3 counts of murder in the first degree. Those witnesses' names are not in this document, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you our decedents' names. There will be 2 other assault victims that are charged. Those names will not be provided to you today. You want me just to hold this like this? All right. The Kansas City Star is on probation. Okay. Again, serious matters today, so let's get back to that. The charges, the first murder in the first degree charge is for an individual. The decedent's name is Clarence Henderson. I think that's been previously reported out. Mr. Henderson also goes by the nickname Nutty, and that is important as you go through the probable cause in this case and the list of charging that we have, because we believe he was the intended target. When I say intended target, we believe that Mr. Clinton, the defendant in this case, sought out Mr. Henderson and lied in wait for him while he was at the Club Klymax, waited for him to exit Club Klymax doors, and then gunned him down. Now, there are several other innocent victims as well. Not that Mr. Henderson is not an innocent victim as well, but there are other victims that were just sort of in the wake of our shooter, Mr. Clinton. So murder in the first degree is for Clarence Henderson's murder with an armed criminal action. murder in the first degree as well for Jason McConnell. He was the individual that we believe was working the door for the club. In an armed criminal action. There's a Antoinette Brinson. She's a mother of 3. She was also charged as a victim in this case. She's actually the second listed victim here. Sorry, I went out of order a little bit. So the first victim is Clarence Henderson. The second victim is Antoinette Brinson, the mother of 3. And the third victim then is Jason McConnell, who is an individual that we think was working the door that evening. There are 2 other assault in the first degree charges, again for 2 individuals that I will not name today, but they are severely injured. And it is really probably a bit of luck, maybe good medical care, quickness of law enforcement at the scene, that those 2 people are alive today, but their injuries are severe and they have a very, very long road ahead of them, and potentially these will be lifelong injuries that they're left to contend with. So there are 2 armed criminal action charges as well to go with each one of those assault in the first degree charges. The warrant that was issued, of course, as we said, was charged a few days ago, and the seal was just lifted after Clinton was apprehended yesterday. And a little bit about our defendant in this case that you will probably see soon is that he was on a federal probation or parole for a weapons violation. And so he was out of custody, but legally so based on that previous agreement with the government. As I said, we believe that this was all based on someone who had a dispute and decided they wanted to resolve it in this way. That's what gets us to the highest possible charge of murder in the first degree. There is not a higher charge than that in the state of Missouri. The bond that was issued in this case by Jackson County is no bond, so Clinton remains in custody at the Jackson County Jail. That triggers some other things for us. This could be a very quick trial for us, given the bond situation that we have, but we'll be prepared and ready to go as soon as we get a courtroom available to us. So I think that pretty much lays out the charges for me. I think what I'd like to do next is turn this over to Sergeant Slater to make some comments about how this case sort of came together. And then there were some earlier reporting, I think, about 911 calls for service to this place on that evening. I think there was some misreporting potentially about how the length of time it took to get there, so I would like the chief to address some of those issues as well. And then, of course, our mayor is here to also talk about these kinds of issues in general. So with that, though, I'm going to turn the podium over to Mark Slater.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, my name is Sergeant Mark Slater. I'm a supervisor of the 990 Homicide Squad. As you know, we had a mass shooting at Club Klymax on the 21st of May in the early morning hours. Detectives assigned to the 990 Squad worked tirelessly during the course of that investigation, and very rapidly we developed Mr. Clinton as a suspect. This investigation is ongoing. I would like to say there are additional suspects that we are working with the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office to identify and hopefully bring a case to the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office for charges. We appreciate we received a great deal of tips and community involvement in this particular case, which was vital to the successful prosecutor's successful charging. We were able to develop quite a bit of physical evidence. I'll leave that to Detective Taylor to talk about specifically, as he's the case detective. But we would like to thank the community and, of course, the detectives that were assigned to this case. They worked diligently, and we were able to very quickly identify a suspect, and we hope to have the rest in custody shortly.
Do you want to talk about it?
Go ahead.
Sure. I'm Detective Ryan Taylor. I was a case detective, lead case detective on this case. just kind of walk you through about some of the more important physical evidence that we gathered in this investigation. First and foremost, I want to agree with Sergeant Slater in saying that community support in this was paramount. I believe personally that our community is the greatest asset that law enforcement has. We're in partnership with them, and we can't do this job without them. So with that being said, when we got to the scene, we were able to gather surveillance video that was in the area, and it did give us a vehicle description. We were able to put that vehicle description out, and we had some very diligent officers in the area and located that vehicle. From there, they pulled that vehicle over, and Mr. Clinton was operating that vehicle. Further, we conducted a search warrant on that vehicle, and we got clothing that we believe that he was wearing on the night of the homicide. Testing with that clothing showed that there was gunshot residue on his pants. And then also we got a cellular device out of the vehicle, and that cellular device gave us a lot of evidence on communication and possible motive. And then further, speaking with people at the scene, the victims, the surviving victims, their statements helped us greatly as well. And I think that's all we have right on that.
Okay, so I think the chief wants to make some comments as well that I've asked her to address some of the issues that came up regarding reporting on 911 service.
Yes, Chief Stacey Graves, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. Early on in the investigation, there was discussion about someone calling 911. We did receive a 911 call at 1:08 in the morning of a suspicious vehicle. At that time, officers were being dispatched on calls that involved imminent threat or danger to someone's life. At that time, at 1:25, we got a call of a shooting, and officers were on scene within 1 minute and began the investigation. So I just wanted to clear that up to just address those concerns that were initially brought up, and just to kind of give the factual information on that. I will say there are still, just like Detective and Sergeant said, there are still suspects that are involved in this situation. We ask anyone with information to call the TIPS hotline. Again, there is a $25,000 reward through the Crime Stoppers for information that leading to an arrest of someone in any homicide, but specifically about this case today.
Mayor?
Quentin Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City. I'll just say this. First, I want to second what you heard from our officers today. This was the result, the charges today are the result of a diligent investigation by our detectives, by the women and men of the Kansas City Police Department that was tireless. It also could not have been done without the help of members of our community. Much of the work that I know Chief Graves has talked to us about, both at the Board of Police Commissioners, City Council, and with all of us, is how we can build better community trust, because community trust helps us solve crimes each and every day in this city. This is the result of that. Hard work, strong relationships, and making sure that we all stay committed to Kansas City being safer. We recognize that this has been a challenging year, and we're only halfway through it when we talk about public safety numbers, particularly shootings and homicides. That being said, at some of our most tragic shootings, mass shootings, shootings outside of clubs, you've seen charges filed against folks who took lives on the streets of Kansas City. And what you are seeing from the entire team here today, at the prosecutor's office, the police department, and beyond in the community, that we will continue to work tirelessly to make sure that anyone who is bringing harm on the people of Kansas City will be caught, apprehended, tried, hopefully convicted, and imprisoned. We will continue to do important investigative work here to make sure all that who are responsible for this crime and other homicides come to justice. And more than anything, we will continue to canvass and work with the community each and every day to make sure that we have a path to building a safer Kansas City. It's not the type of day that you can say that you're excited in any way, because we're talking about the loss of lives, but I am grateful for the hard work of the women and men of law enforcement, grateful for those in Kansas City who were brave, who called in, who provided tips, who gave us all of the tools necessary to bring these charges and hopefully to bring more ahead. And to all those who are causing bad acts in our city, first of all, know that you will be caught, that you will be tried,
you will be convicted, and that justice will be met here in Kansas City. Thank you, Prosecutor Petersberg.
All right. We're happy to take some questions from you. I know that you received a lot of information in a short period of time, so you have not probably had the opportunity to fully absorb that probable cause statement. So we'll do our best to try and answer questions for you.
We talked about community trust. What worked in this case that maybe hasn't worked in other cases to bring somebody to justice?
I think in this case, not to put, as the prosecutor, I like to say this part, not to put so much pressure on our living victims in this case. They are important. We will protect them, and we'll do what we can to make sure that they can heal as rapidly as possible and ease their entry into this courthouse, for the work ahead with them. But that is only, their testimony will be buttressed with surveillance video, very quick police work from the description of the car, the description of our shooter himself at the scene. So there is a lot of other physical evidence, so I think that's sort of the recipe. If we can bring all of that together, really each piece of the puzzle that's needed here, and I feel pretty confident that that's what solved this case, is each piece of the puzzle.
I just wanted to clarify, is Clinton was he the only shooter?
No, we believe there are others that were engaged. We think he is the individual that we believe had the motive of committing this crime, helped set it up, put it in motion, and of course carried it out. We do believe that there are others involved. So what we are asking is that anybody with additional information, I'd like to be back at another podium with announcement of other charges. Anybody that was engaged in this, we want to see justice. And I will remind you, there are five families that were impacted forever by this shooting. Even the living victims will have a forever impact. So we want justice for Clinton in this case, but we want it for everybody who was engaged. Now, to the club itself, it is troubling to me. As a prosecutor, it's just troubling to know that you can have a club where alcohol is served and guns are allowed inside. I think that's a recipe for harm, but apparently it's allowed. So I just say that it's that sets all of us here up for kind of an impossible situation, and it makes environments very, very dangerous for the patrons of those clubs. It's dangerous.
Mayor, as you think about this shooting, as you think about other shootings this year, to what extent has the city's inability to set its own firearm regulation and rules hampered the city's efforts to combat violent crime?
I'll answer it this way, and I fully support cities having the ability to come up with responsible limits to gun access in any number of places. The prosecutor just mentioned bar areas. We continue to fight at the Missouri legislature about firearms on buses and transit, which I think creates substantial concerns. I mean, the community is awash in firearms, and largely firearms that are in places where people either are drinking, are looking at retaliation, are looking at any number of issues. And I think it is clear, not just from Kansas City, but if you talk to mayors, prosecutors, police officers in any major city in the country, these are ingredients that have led to more incidents like these. Just last weekend in other cities like Philadelphia, for example, Wichita, Kansas, we've seen shootings that have substantial similarities to what we experienced at Club Klymax and what we experienced at 57th and Prospect just a few weeks ago. So a few things that I will say with that. First, I know the women and men of the Kansas City Police Department will continue to go out and do the work necessary to bring justice to families and victims. That being said, those of us, and as well as prosecutors and others, those of us who spend more time in the political sphere of things will continue to try to make, I think, what is a very simple common sense argument, which is that guns everywhere continue to bring harm to more of our community each day. There are people that are not just scared to go out, but that people that were going out for a simple evening of enjoyment continue to be impacted negatively by, I think, our fairly loose gun regulations in this state. And that's why you see statistics that are staggering, not just in Kansas City, not just in Springfield, not just in St. Louis, but throughout the state of Missouri more and more. And that is something that will continue to press for change.
Is the Sensible Missouri initiative a potential solution here?
You know, I have not drilled down deeply to the Sensible Missouri proposal. I will be meeting with folks from that would allow cities to set more gun regulations, cities and counties that are responsible ones. I will say this, however, that gun regulation isn't everything, right? We see substantial criminal activity in places like Chicago, Philadelphia, and others that do have some gun regulations, although I will note the U.S. Supreme Court continues to make it more and more challenging all the time to pass any. So I think, look, I'm a believer in local solutions to local problems, and I think that anything that allows the people of Kansas City to have a stronger voice in connection with how we can feel safer when we're going to grocery stores, schools, or for a night out is something that would be positive for us long term.
Other questions?
We do hear thoughts from the police union specifically that maybe the lack of police officers on the streets leads to less homicides being cleared, less homicides being solved. Does this go against that narrative at all?
It sure seems to.
Yeah.
Here we are. Here we are with a difficult shooting. You know, if you think about how these incidents occur, it's hard to, you know, that when people don't leave a lot of clues behind. This whole squad, you know, had to turn on a dime. This prosecutor as well had to turn on a dime in the middle of the night to kind of figure out where are the cameras and start working from there. And they did that. So I guess what I would take is, you know, from your comments is that even against the odds, and we feel like sometimes we're pushing upstream often with the amount of homicides that are occurring. But here we are, and we're going to push hard on this case all the way through courtroom doors. So this is not a celebration today. We're not done. We're really just beginning. But we'll fight on. We'll fight on.
I could address that.
Sure.
Just a touch. You know, there's a lot of things that we're doing inside the police department internally. We have, since I've come in, we've restructured some of our investigative elements. We have done a staffing study. We'll be doing a different shift to try to get more officers on the street to try to prevent some of these other tragic events, and also the ability to respond quick like we did in this situation. But I also want to say, too, that since I've been in this position, I've talked a lot about prevention and intervention, but I don't want it to go on deaf ears that third is enforcement. And that is what we are here to do as well. So I do want to send that message that your law enforcement officials here in the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department are here to enforce. And this is some part of that. We would rather work in the prevention and intervention, but we are also in the enforcement business. And I do want to send a message of enforcement, especially with the way that the gun violence is here in Kansas City. We will continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners to make Kansas City safer.
Gene, I have one question about the night it went down. Gene, I'm sorry.
Gene.
Sorry, Chief. Was this like a reaction shoot? I mean, like, suspect shot the victim. Did everybody else pull their guns out then? Or obviously there were multiple guns being pulled at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. But we believe this is the main culprit. This is the individual that set everything in motion. And so he is the one that kind of kicked off the whole storm. That's the way we
But there was
view the
other
evidence.
people just going for the guns when they heard.
I think there are other people involved. Okay, there are other people involved. Those shooters remain under investigation. And again, one more plea. I would really like to know who they are. So would they. We would really like to be able to build, files on them that get us to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So our doors are open, our phones are working, and we'd like to get that information so we can work those cases too.
And do we know how many the suspect shot? Just the one, or he had multiple victims?
Is that listed in here?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
The number of shooters and whether or not that's in our PC statement.
There are listed 3 different suspects, all of who fired a weapon. and we believe are co-conspirators.
The charged suspect shot one person.
No, so as far as who shot who, that's going to be something that we're going to have to dive into in court with the help of the medical examiner and firearms specialist to know exactly that. So, yeah.
Oh, I have a question for the police chief. Do you plan on increasing police presence outside entertainment districts moving forward on the weekends?
We already have that. This was a club in a neighborhood, so that would be up to the district officers that are assigned to that area to patrol that area. I will tell you that this is a club that we were already aware of. We have officers that work in our neighborhoods. We're community policing, so we should be aware of what's going on in our areas, just like we were aware of 5-7 Prospect. We were aware of this club.
I might just add this on to what the chief said, and we had a meeting about this just yesterday as it speaks to entertainment venues. The police department is working with city staff, particularly regulated industries and other areas, to ensure that where we have consistent concerns, we're not just looking at enforcement from the side of the police department, which does have in some ways limited tools with criminal conduct, but also where there's non-compliance with rules of liquor license owners, inconsistency with compliance with business licenses, and other items that may allow for the closure of businesses that have been frequent, not just nuisances, but havens for violent crime in our city too consistently. That's something that, coming out of some of the incidents that we've had in recent weeks, we are doubling down on to make sure that we aren't just seeing the same situation again and again. And in some situations, we've had neighborhoods and neighbors who have called a number of times. They've reached out to community interaction officers at KCPD, but at times the solution might be at City Hall. We're working to make sure that we're all working together more closely, and that's something that I think the people of Kansas City will see more enforcement on as well. Briefly to your question,
Yes, sir.
We all agree, I think, with the Fraternal Order of Police on this basic point. We continue to all wish to hire more police officers. City Council, Mayor, certainly the department's working hard to do it. I think that's something that we'll continue to push, and I don't think there is a difference in opinion on that. Kansas City needs to be adequately policed. I think it is fair to say, at least from the elected side and the Board of Police Commissioners side, we're not where we need to be, and we'll continue to work on that to make sure that there's support for the women and men up here who are doing, I think, outstanding work each day for our city.
One more point there. It is on us, right, to do this work. City Hall has their role, the prosecutor has her role, and so do police. But so do these clubs. If you're going to operate that type of business, you have an obligation as well to keep your patrons safe. And you should take necessary steps to make sure your patrons are going to be safe at your club as they enter the door and as they exit the door and while they're inside. That's a basic, it should be a basic fundamental of running a business in this city. So we need their help too, for all of us to be able to do this work. We need their help as well. And while I'm at it, I grew up in a farming community where we had more cows than people. And the gun laws in Missouri work well there. They do. If I lived in that small rural community on the farm, I would probably think our gun laws are swell in the state of Missouri, because they probably largely are. But that's not true for us here. Kansas City has different needs. It's a different kind of place. And so we shouldn't have gun laws for Frankenstein, Missouri in Kansas City, Missouri. It seems kind of basic to me. Really. All right, anybody else?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks you all. Have a great afternoon.
Hey, Jim, please ask you a question.
Alrighty, so we just heard from officials there giving us an update on those new criminal charges in that nightclub shooting that took place on May 21st. I do want to take a look at this video, file video from May 21st, as I kind of go through a rundown of the biggest updates coming from that press conference. So a man has been charged with murder after killing 3 and injuring 2 in the May 21st Klymax Lounge shooting. Again, that's what officials just announced during that press conference. Jackson County Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker announced that 36-year-old Isaiah Clinton has been charged with 3 counts of murder in the first degree. He is currently being held without bond. He is in the Jackson County Jail right now. And they actually believe that there are still other suspects that are involved in this situation. But as far as Clinton, he was charged days ago, but they are just now announcing this morning that he is in custody. Again, he is being held without bond regarding this shooting that happened on May 21st. You saw there Police Chief Stacey Graves and Mayor Quentin Lucas were in attendance at that press conference. We're going to touch on a few things that they mentioned during that press conference. But first, I do want to talk about the fact that Clarence Henderson, they did mention him. The prosecutor mentioned him. He is believed to be the intended target. They believe that Clinton actually waited for him outside of the doors and then gunned him down once he exited the Klymax Lounge on May 21st. Now, police also mentioned that when they got to the scene, shortly after that shooting, they got surveillance video, and that's when they were able to identify Clinton's car. They had a warrant out for his car, and then once they got in contact with Clinton, they saw that he had gunshot residue on his pants. Now, as far as what Mayor Quentin Lucas touched on, he said that anyone bringing crime into the city will be held responsible, and also Police Chief Stacey Graves said that they are working to get more officers on the streets. Now, as always, you can head to our website, kctv5.com. We just updated the story, and we'll continue to update the story. You can find it on our homepage for quick access. But again, that is the latest, that murder charges have been announced in the Klymax Lounge nightclub shooting, and that 36-year-old Isaiah Clinton is in custody. But they believe that there are other suspects still out there. So they are looking to the community for help and for any tips. They mentioned that they appreciate the community helping them get this far in the investigation. But of course, the investigation continues. Be sure to tune into our noon newscast coming up here in a bit for more details. And as always, we will continue to update you all throughout the day today and in the coming days. So be sure to have our KCTV5 News app, as you will receive those instant notifications.